At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized, so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
The Mario Rosenstock Podcast with On Ice, Ireland's premium ice skating experience, where winter memories are made. Visit onice.ie.
GoLoud. Sounds better with us.
Coming up on this episode of the Mario Rosenstock Podcast.
The problems come when we start merging our behaviour with who we are. If I'm doing very well at something, then I think I'm great. If I'm doing very bad at something, I think I'm terrible. So I play the rating game. I'm going up and down the scale, morning, noon and night, every sort of day. If my social media feed is doing great, I'm fantastic. If my social media feed is not going well, I feel terrible. So the rating game is all about this ridiculous idea that one human being can be rated over another.
Dr. Harry Barry is a man who knows a lot about the human brain and how it works. He's a medical doctor but takes a particular interest in mental health and what lies beneath the conditions that so many of us are familiar with, like anxiety, panic attacks, phobias, depression, toxic stress and addiction. In this episode, Harry breaks down the common causes behind these conditions and explains some of the simple things we can do, each one of us, to break out of them. We also talk about the impact of social media on young minds, a simple fix for social anxiety, why your frustration with other drivers on the road might be more serious than you think, and much, much more.
It is the only condition in the whole of medicine that makes you believe that you're the problem. If you came to me and said you're diabetes or hypertension or heart failure or an ulcer, I would go to the doctor immediately if I thought I had one of those things. But when I have depression, I believe I'm the problem. I am the problem. Look, I said, I'm going to make this very simple. Go home tonight, open your door, go out and get two strangers, a man and a woman from the street, bring them in and let them have sex in front of your 9-year-old. And I said, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And of course, social media was built on the grounds of, if I can make one person compare their lives to another person, then I'm going to make a fortune. And what's happened? These guys have got richer and richer and richer, and we are getting more and more and more distressed. My friend was pulling at me saying, come on, we'll go, it's time to go. And I said, no, there's something about that girl. And I went off around the place and I found her.
It's like a sliding doors moment.
Yeah, from that moment onwards, we've been inseparable.
Harry has also just published a memoir called Beneath the Surface, a doctor's journey of empathy, healing and self-discovery. And we talk about that too. But first, listen, we have a podcast here. It's called the Mario Rosenstock Podcast. But there's other podcasts out there. And one podcast in particular, Path to Power, with Ivan Yates and Matt Cooper, has been the talk not only of the podcast community, but of Ireland. Here's our take.
Good afternoon, Ivan Yates, Media Coaching Enterprises. How can I help you?
Ivan, it's Matt.
Matt? How are you, Matt? I was just going to ring you in point of fact.
What the hell were you thinking, Ivan?
Matt, I can explain everything, okay? I wanted to meet you in person. You know how important you are to me.
No, don't try to charm your way out of this. You cheated on me, Ivan.
Matt, come on, lighten up, will you? It was only a little fling.
Why didn't you tell me about him?
Who?
Jim Gavin.
Matt, it was nothing. It was a one-time thing, just a couple of quickies.
Quickies?
Come on, Matt. You knew what you were getting into when you got into bed with me.
We made a commitment to each other.
Ah, you knew there'd be a bit of slap and tickle. I like a bit on the side.
Well,
you said you liked a bit of rough, remember? What did you expect, Matt?
I expected fidelity, Ivan.
Look, they meant nothing to me, Matt.
They? You mean there was more than one?
Well, yes, James Brown, the housing minister.
You had a session with him as well, is that what you're
I
saying?
gave him one a few months ago.
Oh.
It meant nothing, Matt.
Are you even going to ask me? Are you even going to ask me how I feel, Ivan?
Oh, forget the woke stuff, will you, Matt?
Shut up! Do you even care how I feel, Ivan?
Okay, how do you feel, Matt?
First, I was afraid.
Huh?
I was petrified. I was shocked and disappointed, Ivan, when you lied.
Mea culpa.
And how you spent so many nights leading me along. That was wrong.
True.
But now, Ivan, you will hear my song. Where is your head?
Huh?
In outer space? You should have told me about Jim Gavin in the election race.
Well.
I should have known you'd do the dirt. I should have known you'd drop the ball. Yes, I knew you were a flirt. But Jesus, Ivan, feel a fall. Go on now, go.
Come on, Matt.
Get off my pod.
Matt.
That's the last time that you'll cheat on me, I swear to holy God.
Come on.
Noel Kelly told me when I met you I'd rue the day. Then I read the Irish Independent late on Saturday. No, Ivan, no.
Please, Matt.
I will survive.
Come on.
With my podcast and the last word, I'll do the 5 at 5. I've got guests to interview. I'll be straight and I'll be true. I will survive.
It's woke, Matt.
I will survive.
Matt.
Ooh.
Matt, you're hysterical.
How could you?
Calm down.
How could you, Ivan?
Matt.
I could never forgive you.
Matt.
And brand new comedy every week on the Mario Rosenstock podcast. And I hope you enjoyed that sketch because I certainly enjoyed making it. I even got a text from Matt this week with crying tears emoji of laughter. So obviously he was a good sport about it. Okay, so thanks, of course. Well, of course, by the way, you can get in touch with me anytime you want. MarioRosenstock@gmail.com. Any inquiry that is of interest to you, whether you want to constructively criticise the show, compliment me, all ends up, suggest sketch ideas or characters or new characters that I haven't done or somebody that I may have missed in the public eye that would be a good nail to do on sketches. And of course, big thanks to our sponsor, On Ice, Ireland's premium ice skating experience. It has returned this season. They used to sponsor us before and they're back again. They're bringing back the magic of ice skating, folks, nationwide this festive season. They have locations in Dundrum and Swords, in Dublin, in Marina Market in Cork, as well as locations in Waterford and Limerick. Enjoy Ireland's #1 festive and family entertainment this Christmas. Grab your tickets now at onice.ie, and I certainly will be and have been doing so, and I'm bringing a whole bunch of youngsters down there to enjoy this invigorating and fabulous pastime. So let's meet my special guest on this episode, Dr. Harry Barry. I think you're going to find this a really interesting conversation, folks, because we talk about all of that mental health states and conditions that so many of us are familiar with, either directly or indirectly, and some of the myths about them too, and the solutions to them. So let's cross straight over to Harry as he sets the scene.
We're all talking about mental health. We're all terrified to talk about mental illness. But the bogeyman in the room that is causing the greatest trouble is emotion distress.
Emotional distress.
And emotion distress is this mixture of lifestyle issues plus all these unhealthy negative emotions plus anxiety plus depression. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's mental illness is kind of more bipolar disorder, psychosis, eating disorders, OCD, treatment-resistant depression. Do you know what I mean? Where we're into what I would call heavy-duty psychiatry teams, mental health teams. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the majority of us struggle with grief, struggle with hurt, struggle with relationship problems. You know, all these things that cause us so much distress. Why do some people end up at the side of a river? Why do some people end up totally emotionally distressed who are not mentally ill at all?
Yes.
And the reason is that they have reached a crisis in their lives through emotional distress.
Mm.
And emotional distress, I know because I've talked to some of these people. Do you know what I mean? I've actually, I've helped some people, do you know what I mean, get out of this mess, if you want to put it like that.
What is emotion distress as opposed to hyper-anxiety or severe depression?
No. Anxiety is not. Anxiety is a huge cause of emotional distress, but it's not a mental illness. Depression, clinical depression versus what most people misunderstand as depression, which is just having a bad day, do you know what I mean? Clinical depression is a cognitive, physical and psychological illness. Very different animal altogether. So we might talk about that if you want. So I would say that mild to moderate depression would fall into emotional distress, but when you get into serious depression or treatment-resistant depression, you're really moving into illness. Mm-hmm. But in general, the majority of people are toxically stressed. Acute anxiety, you know the 3 kinds of anxiety?
No.
I'll go through them.
Go on, yes.
Yeah. There's 3 kinds of anxiety. And so when somebody comes to me and says, I'm anxious, well, the first thing I'll say to them, which kind of anxiety are you bothered with? Do you know what? Because anxiety can be broken up into 3 parts. Acute anxiety, which is panic attacks and phobias. General anxiety, where I'm a constant worrier, catastrophizer, foreboding, and all the physical symptoms. And social anxiety, where I'm really anxious when I go into certain social situations. And the treatment for each one of those is very different. And the management was very different. And in general, as a general rule of thumb, it should never involve medication. Do you know what I mean? It should involve CBT. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, cognitive behavioral therapy.
And I use a version of cognitive called CBM.
Oh, which is?
Which is cognitive behaviour methods. And the idea behind this is that if you want to be fully trained CBT therapist, it takes you about 7 years. Do you know what I mean? But you can use the concepts behind that very simply to sort out 90% of cases of emotional distress.
Oh, wow.
So I can teach people how to manage their hurt, their guilt, their shame, their anxiety, even their mood. But now, depression is a different animal because it is a cognitive illness. So we might talk about that.
Well, several people I know, of course, I want to be very careful that I'm not a clinician.
Yeah.
So
I am, though.
You are, but I want to be very careful. So you can keep me in my box. But several people I know that are very close to me underwent cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
And it really, really worked.
Oh, but it's like I'm not joking now. I would say that on average, the normal number of times it takes me to help somebody get over their panic attacks, phobias, social anxiety is 3 visits. 3 visits. And that's not just this will be where I would expect these people to be better. Do you know what I mean? So, but I will give them,
Can I ask a stupid question? And because I know where you're going, and this is all from, you're coming from the area of care.
Yes.
Empathy.
Yes.
Sympathy.
And also problem solving,
And your problem solving.
Because I'm a GP, a GP doesn't have the luxury of wading back into, what were things like when you were 5. Do you know what I mean? A GP, if somebody comes into a problem, and my attitude is, what's the quickest, simplest way to get this person?
So you're a practical person as well, yeah?
Very practical.
Yeah, but so I just wanted to jump in.
That came from Africa, by the way.
Your time in Africa.
My time in Africa, where you had no choice. You were a problem solver. If you didn't solve the problem, the person died.
To a sensitive person who practices empathy and practices practicality, I wanted to ask an insensitive question, and I want you to deal with it.
Sure.
Do you think nowadays that some people are almost self-diagnosing themselves with anxieties that are merely mild anxieties, but they're almost falling into this thing of they want to label themselves with something so that they almost have a crutch?
Well, I would suggest that many, many people who think they're anxious are actually stressed.
Yes, which is what you would describe on a lower level.
A much lower level. The stress is where certain things in my life are really bothering me and I'm not coping very well with them. And I end up really, really quite stressed out. But one of the consequences of stress is anxiety. Do you know what I mean? So many, many people, it's a nice label. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
When somebody comes to me, I'll describe what I call normal anxiety.
Yes.
Where we all get anxious. I get anxious. Everybody gets anxious, But where a person's life is being crippled by anxiety, that's when I come in.
I have like a lot of like all of us, we have things to do.
Yeah.
We have deadlines to hit.
Yes.
We have pressures, right?
Stress.
Well, no, because I actually have a different word that I use. It's not a clinical word, of course. It's just a word that I use, which is when I'm talking to my wife or whatever, she goes, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Yeah, and I'm just under a good bit of pressure at the moment." Right? Now, for me, pressure doesn't mean I'm stressed.
Okay.
The pressure means I'm just under pressure, that's all. But I'm dealing with it. Okay?
Okay.
Stress is when, in my world, the pressure becomes overextended, and now it is toxifying. It is becoming toxic.
I would agree completely with you.
But pressure is a good thing. We need to be under pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and in fact, when I
ourselves.
I wrote a book called Toxic Stress, and one of the things I made that we can be actually just as stressed by being underwhelmed by the amount of work we have as being overwhelmed.
Correct, yes.
So in other words, I think it's when toxic stress is really when we're overrun. Do you know what I mean?
Anyway, by the roundabout thing I was trying to come at, from you picked up on straight away when I asked my first question was, what my actual first question, which you actually preempted and you jumped in perfectly, was, because I come from a family, like a lot of families, who have a history of mental health issues going back all the way to our forefathers, great-grandparents and all this. I was going to ask you, and you kind of did there, to give me a kind of an overview of how we have changed in our attitude towards mental health. To wit, I remember growing up in Waterford, and they used to talk about the mental house.
Yes.
Right? And it was a place called St. Otteran's. And, it was just...
But every part of the country has their own version of that.
And in that place, you would find people who were suffering from their nerves, in inverted commas. And in that place, you were having treatments like electric shock therapy.
Terrible. Well, you see, my whole approach is like, I remember walking through, I talk about it in the book, I remember walking through one of the major psychiatric institutes here in Dublin. It was part of our course, do you know what I mean? We went to, and we visited this, and it was full of these long locked wards with these lost souls wandering up and down who had obviously been here for decades, do you know what I mean? And I remember coming away feeling very angry and annoyed, do you know what I mean? I assure you to God, there must be another way of managing people's mental health, do you know what I mean? But to be honest, really, I had to park all that because the world at that time was all about physical health. The world from between, say, 1975 and 2000 was really the huge advances in physical health. But we weren't making the same kind of advances in mental health. And even to this day, do you know what I mean? I firmly believe, and I will go to my grave really with this belief, that we are ignoring to our peril emotional distress. We are completely ignoring the joker in the pack. Because every solitary person I know, you have it, I have it, I'm sure everybody you know, everybody you're friendly with, will have experienced periods of emotion distress. It could be that you lose somebody you love very much, do you know what I mean? And you go through a huge amount of grief and you're struggling with grief. That's emotion distress. It could be that you're very hurt because things have happened to you in your life, do you know, in your past, or maybe those things are repeated in your mind over and over and over again, because hurt grows legs, and unfortunately the more hurt you carry, the more hurt you bring to other people, and so on and so on. It might be that you're very frustrated with life and don't know how to manage it. It might be that you struggle with anxiety and you're afraid to come up your genuine anxiety. I'm not talking about normal anxiety, but where anxiety is starting to intrude in on your life in a major way. For example, I'll give you a very good example of somebody who came to me from a capital city, not in Ireland, had 6 different phobias, had lost their relationship, was about to lose their job, do you know what I mean? And within 2 sessions, I was able to help that person turn it all around, and 6 weeks later she was sending me back videos of all the things she was now doing. Phobia is gone. So my point is that if you can, I have people who spent, I can think of people maybe 10, 20 years struggling with hurt. I've had people maybe with bouts of depression as a result of that hurt. Do you know what I mean? And nobody had ever shown them what to do. So I've had people come to me with terrible shame over things that might happen to them, and nobody's explained to them what to do. So it's like as if we're suppressing all this stuff. Do you know what I mean? And we're saying this isn't relevant, this is not important. So we're still in this binary situation that I'm either mentally ill or mentally healthy. Whereas in reality, the vast majority of us, to be honest, for the most of our lives, are mentally healthy. Do you know, we don't have bipolar disorder, we don't have psychosis, we don't have eating disorders. But that doesn't mean that we won't go through periods where we're significantly emotionally distressed, sometimes to the point where self-harm comes into the picture, and where I've actually had people who have, I remember one person walking in the door and saying to me, "This will be my last port of call." Do you know what I mean? In other words, I won't be going anywhere else. So don't underestimate the negative effect of emotion distress in our lives. But it's this lack of understanding of what it is, and the realization that there's an enormous amount we can do with it. That's the bit that I'm excited by.
Exactly.
We can change our brains. You know what I mean? We can, from a neurocircuitry point of view, we can do away with these negative circuits that are causing us such distress, and we can replace them with positive circuits in our brain.
We can rewire.
We can reshape our own brain. What an incredibly exciting idea.
Of course.
You know, that I don't have to rely on experts. I don't have to rely on medication a lot of the time.
Crucially, the medication,
yes. And medication, in my opinion, should be preserved for genuine. There are certain conditions that I would recommend it. And if somebody,
it's clinical depression, which requires medication.
I'd like to talk about a proper bout of clinical depression, because a lot of people out there believe that I call the emotion of depression versus the illness of depression. And we all struggle with the emotion of depression, where we're rating ourselves, where we're negative about ourselves, where maybe something negative happens in our lives, and so we're kind of down for a couple of days. Do you know what I mean?
But I wouldn't dream of calling that depression.
No, but lots of people do.
Okay.
Lots of people. So when you say, "Oh, that person is very depressed," the ordinary person will ally that to the way they feel sometimes. And they say, "Why can't they just snap out of it?"
Yes.
Which is, of course, terribly insulting for a person with clinical depression. Now, clinical depression comes in bouts which last around 6 to 9 months. That's a really important statement. For all of the rest of the time, when I don't have those bouts, I'm completely normal and well. So most people will only struggle. About 80% of people will get between 3 and 4 episodes in their whole life. And yet everybody kind of says, "Oh, that poor person has depression." That's not actually true at all.
They have bouts of depression.
They have bouts of depression. Now, that's critically important to me.
Is this something that we've learned in the last 50, 40, 30 years? Or is it something...
I think we've known this for the last 25 years at least. And I've been screaming about it for years.
Yes.
That, for example, and I think this is another really important point, that 50% of cases of new depression are between 15 and 25.
Years of age?
Yes. So 1 and 2 first bouts of depression will occur between 25% between 15 and 18. I would often find that these kids, when they're doing their Leaving Cert or when they're going to college, and suddenly, the part that I would love to get across is that this is a physical, cognitive and psychological illness. And it's the cognitive bit that everybody misses. So cognitive, there are 4 parts to cognition. There's your memory, there's your attention or concentration, there's your executive function, which is how you solve problems, and there's your psychomotor speed, which is the speed at which your body obeys your brain. And if I'm talking to somebody and they're chatting away to me and they've no signs of any concentration problems, they're not delayed, it's clear they don't have any cognitive issues, well, then I'll be immediately reassessing this person genuinely have depression. Because a lot of people come to me who think they have depression, but they've actually got anxiety.
Yes.
So, but if they are cognitively down and really struggling even to concentrate on what you're saying,
yes,
then you know this is the real deal. And the really important part of that is, so people often ask, well, why is medication relevant at all?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it improves people's cognition. And nobody ever talks about this. That, for example, it's a waste of time trying to do CBT or any type of therapy, by the way, apart from supportive therapy, with a person who's genuinely cognitively down because of depression. So it's because they'll feel terrible, they won't be sleeping, they won't be eating, they'll have terrible negative views of themselves.
They won't be able to engage in
they won't be able to engage in their therapy. So it's really important for me, this, because I would never dream of trying to do CBT or CBM, which is, we can talk about this in a minute. CBT, I would never dream of trying to do CBT on somebody who's cognitively down, because they simply cannot absorb the information.
One thing that I took out of what you said there in the last bit was that the 50% of new cases of depression are among 15 to 25-year-olds.
Yes.
15 to 25-year-olds are at a time when your hormones are changing quite rapidly. Your environment is...
Predicted between 14 and 18. Not so much so between 18 and 25.
But your life is changing as well, in the sense that you're under a tremendous amount of stress to do with junior cert, leaving cert. It seems self-evident that if this statistic is true, 15 to 25, that's an ideal time for the state to concentrate on this and really invest in that 10-year period of our kids.
But think about it. Just think about this. The vast depression this is another thing that's totally missed. It's the only illness in the whole of medicine. Remember, I'm a GP. I've dealt with everything, every sort of thing between Africa and back here in Ireland. It is the only condition in the whole of medicine that makes you believe that you're the problem. It's a very unique illness. If you came to me and said you're diabetes or hypertension or heart failure or an ulcer, we wouldn't bat an eyelid. But if I would go to the doctor immediately if I thought I had one of those things. But when I have depression, I believe I'm the problem. I am the problem, not that depression. So I remember talking, giving at the AGM of the Samaritans one time, and the line they picked out of the whole talk was the line that I get almost everybody with depression to write down. They actually write it down. And it goes, it's a very simple thing. It is the problem. I am not the problem. What I'm doing is I'm trying to say to the person, this is not defining you. This is just an illness that you happen to have at this particular moment in time. You're having a bout of this. And the great thing about it is if you treat it well at the start, that's the really great thing. The quicker you can diagnose it, the quicker you can treat it, and the better you treat it, and the more skills you give the person. We know from experience that the lesser number of episodes they're going to have in the future. So it's kind of investing for the future. Now, that doesn't mean, for example, if I'm a mother, do you know what I mean? And maybe I've had a bout when I was a student, and I'm grand, and then I hit the postnatal period. Well, then the whole shift in both the hormones and in my whole lifestyle that happens there often triggers a bout of depression. Do you know what I mean? So there are certain key moments that people are very at risk. Relationship breaks down for men in particular. It seems to be a very powerful stress trigger. So I've always believed, and I said it from the very first book, this is my 12th book, I said it at the very start, the commonest single trigger for depression is stress. So in other words, if I'm a person who's prone to depression, high cortisol levels will pump up my risks of getting a bout of clinical depression. And if you don't think it's a physical illness, well, think about it. Your inflammatory cytokines go through the roof. Your cortisol levels go through the roof. Your risks of diabetes, your risks of heart disease, all these things go through the roof. So this is a clinical illness. Do you know what I mean? So we have to start identifying it, treating it properly. And the second thing is there's a huge lack of understanding about the difference between anxiety and depression. Lots and lots of people come to me thinking they're either depressed and they're anxious or thinking they're anxious and they're actually depressed. So a really important distinction that the person who's generally anxious is usually anxious most of the time. Do you know what I mean? In other words, they spend most of their lives worrying, catastrophizing, with all the physical symptoms that cortisol...
I keep thinking of Woody Allen when you say that, all of Woody Allen's movies.
Yes.
He's constantly just going around mildly anxious, I think.
Exactly. So,
catastrophizing.
But unfortunately, women 2 to 1 struggle with this condition. Do you know what I mean?
Worriers.
And they're worrying and they're catastrophizing, they have a sense of foreboding. It's associated with perfectionism, it's associated with procrastination, and it's associated with huge negative self-rating. So all those things are part... They are such easily manageable issues. Do you know what I mean? They're all managed with CBT.
One of the things that's come across here now, right, is that we have learned a lot more in the last 40 years, which is true. Yeah. We're talking about a lot more. Yeah. We have a lot more tools to deal with.
But we're not using the tools.
Well, I was going to suggest as well, we are also fighting a losing battle, or not a losing battle.
Social media.
Not only social media, the world we're living in. I wrote down 2 things. Negative self-rating, right? That is social media.
Okay.
And catastrophizing. That is the news.
Okay.
So basically we are living in a world where we're getting to deal with it better, but it's also the waves, the tsunamis are coming at us even more.
Think about what we're doing to our children. I have for 10 years, at least 10 years, long before this became the buzzword at the moment, I was warning parents 10 years ago. And it was being laughed out of some meetings, by the way. I kept saying, this is disastrous for the mental health of our children, our children. I was talking then about young adolescents, do you know what I mean? Maybe 12, 13, 14. now we're giving smartphones to 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 9-year-olds, and we're allowing them on social media at very early ages when they shouldn't be anywhere near. Like if I was to be exposed at a physical level to the crap that these children are watching left, right and centre, and then we wonder why they're anxious. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
It's inevitable that you're going to be. So everywhere I go, I talk about this.
I don't know if this is an offshoot that you talk about, but it's something I feel quite strongly about as well. And it's an offshoot of social media. But because of our squeamishness, we don't talk enough, I think, about pornography.
But pornography
and the accessibility of pornography to 9-year-olds.
I've been talking about pornography for 10 years. Do you know what I mean? I remember at one particular meeting, and this particular man was giving me a terrible time. And I eventually said to him, look, I said, I'm going to make this very simple. Go home tonight, open your door, go out and get two strangers, a man and a woman from the street. Bring them in and let them have sex in front of your 9-year-old. And I said, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So that's what you're exposing your children to.
Yeah.
Now, these kids, by the age, I've been talking about this for years, by 10 or 11 in groups, they're watching porn.
Yeah.
So I've actually had young people who've come to me over the years really struggling with the whole world of relationships and sexuality because they've been messed up completely by this. So it's but the part that really frustrates me, now I honestly, genuinely believe that parents have woken up. I really believe that a lot of parents now are beginning to get the message that we have to really get stuck in here, because it is a parental problem. It's not a young person's problem. We're the ones, it's the parent who's given the child the phone. So why can't you give the child a Nokia phone? Do you know what I mean? If you want to know where the child is. Why can't you give them a watch with a tracker on it that tells them where you are if you're worried about that? Do you know what I mean? But why do you have to give them an instrument and then particularly, one of my real bugbears, why in God's name are we allowing them to go to their bedrooms at night with their phones under their pillows? What do they think is going to happen all night long? And when it's only when I, as a GP, had to actually manage situations where young people tried to take their own lives because of constant bullying online.
Correct, yeah.
And when you've actually had to deal with that, it's no longer just a nice interesting concept. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You've actually had to deal with the reality of that.
The bullying is really...
So the bullying, the pornography, the negative news, the constant rating. I was down in talking about 150 school kids, their transitions, leaving cert kids, down the country, and the exercise that I got the greatest response for was the rating exercise. Do you know what I mean? And the rating exercise is something that I do with all groups, and I do with all young people, and it's to teach them to learn to stand on their own 2 feet and to stop rating themselves and to stop allowing other people to rate. Because that's really where I believe for years and years and years, the majority of our problems are coming from. We're allowing ourselves to rate ourselves, and we're allowing other people to influence us in terms of rating. And of course, social media was built on the grounds of, if I can make one person compare their lives to another person, then I'm going to make a fortune. And what's happened? These guys have got richer and richer and richer, and we are getting more and more and more distressed.
And the algorithm is feeding the stress.
Of course it is.
Because the algorithm actually loves the stress.
Yes.
So basically the algorithm is perpetuating and self-fulfilling the stress. The more stress it sees, the more stress it's going to put on, the more stress it's going to feed.
So if we really are serious about mental health, and I have to say I get tired of the term mental health.
So do I.
And if there's anything that drives me crackers, it's this. The person has a mental health problem. What in God's name is that? That's a bit like saying, I've got a physical health problem. Well, is it a blood pressure? Is it diabetes? Is it heart disease?
I've got a physical health problem.
We never say, actually, that person has a physical health problem.
No.
But we do say all the time. And the reason why we say it is because we're terrified to use the word mental illness.
Yes.
And we definitely do not want to talk about emotional distress because we don't recognise it and we don't understand it.
I must say, I'm loving hearing this expression, emotional distress. But I never I never knew that there was an aversion to talking about emotional distress. I knew that there was an aversion to talking about mental illness. Yes. The reason I think is that because in their vernacular, I think people assume that mental illness is a regressive term that would have only been used in the 80s or 90s. Yes. Whereas now we have moved on to the word mental health. No. It's like saying, do you remember when we were in school and a fellow would go, your man is a spastic? Yes. You can't say that.
Instead, you talk about cerebral palsy now.
Yes, exactly.
So, but I because I'm a GP, we don't have the luxury. Our job is to diagnose something and try and help the person manage it. Mm-hmm. So if instead of saying you've got a physical health problem, I say, no, you've got blood pressure. You know what I mean? Or you've got diabetes or whatever. And my approach to mental health is very similar. If I think that you have a serious mental illness, my attitude is, I am not the person to deal with you. You need to go to a mental health team. Do you know what I mean?
Negative self-rating.
Negative self-rating.
Rating yourselves, rating others, the culture of rating, feeding the algorithm, feeding the beast of stress.
Yeah.
Mental health solution. You are a man of, you're a practical person. You are a GP.
I'm a GP.
What then, rather than talking about it together, what suggestions could you make at if I invited you as King of Ireland and I said I want a court and I want Dr. Harry Barry on my thing, I want to go, look, all these kids, I have nephews and they're all self-rating themselves. Harry Barry, what do we do?
Okay, the first thing I would do is I would try to teach all children unconditional self-acceptance. I would teach them how to manage. By the way, let's start from the beginning. I would teach them their physical body. Nobody ever talks about their amygdala, their prefrontal cortex, adrenaline. In other words, I would teach them how my stress system works and what it's like when I feel panicky and what to do when I feel panicky and what a phobia is and what to do when I feel a phobia. So I would be teaching that at school. The second thing I would be teaching them, so that would eliminate a huge amount of anxiety, by the way. You know, I would also teach them.
It's very interesting. Learning about your central nervous system.
Learning about how your stress system works, how hormones work, what adrenaline is, what cortisol is.
Very good.
Secondly, I would teach them something that, funny enough, some principals out there, and a lot of principals, if they're listening to this, would really agree with me on this, you know what I mean? Teach them unconditional self-acceptance, which was a concept that was created by Albert Ellis, the father of CBT, the guy who created CBT. And he was asked one time, what are we going to do about this term self-esteem? And of course, I have no time for self-esteem. I think it's the greatest load of nonsense that has ever existed. I think, by the way, the American Psychological Association, because I wrote a book on this, self-acceptance, in the year 2000, actually said, we can't define it and we can't measure it. So I know, let's talk about something we can't define.
American term.
And, no, but self-esteem is a world term, you know what I mean? And I will be laughed out of the studio.
What is self-esteem? I know what it is, but why do you think it's an amorphous term?
Because if I said to you, I remember having a row with an English professor or somebody about this, because we were talking about the term worthless. Is a classic example. So a lot of people come to me and they say, I feel weak, or I feel a failure, or I feel worthless. So I said to him, well, I'm from Ireland. I said, I'm very stupid. Would you explain to me now, what does worthless mean? He said, oh yeah, it's all about your self-worth. And I said, well, self-worth, what does that mean? He says, well, how much how much you measure yourself, what your value, the value you put on yourself. So I said, is that in pounds or sterling?
Yeah.
And he didn't really get it. He didn't like that at all, of course. He wasn't happy with that at all. But the point I'm trying to make, if you're worth less, then somebody else must be worth more. Can you tell me the grounds on which you make that assessment? Mm-hmm. And of course, what actually this is all about, that's why I give the kids the rating exercise. That's why they love the rating exercise, by the way. And they got it, by the way. They got it 10 times quicker than the adults got it. Because they're so used to the world of rating, because they live in a world of rating. And we live in, I mean, you come into all these radio stations and they're all done on my ratings and my world, everything is rating now. Go into Google, it's all rating. So rating is all about how we measure one thing versus another. That's the concept of rating. So esteem is an old English term for the word measurement.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know that.
No.
So actually, it was a way of measuring, say, the value of a painting, or a value versus one painting versus another painting, or one bit of porcelain versus another bit of porcelain.
An esteemed writer, highly rated
writer.
Yes,
exactly. But the whole problem then was Then it became the norm, and it was a myth. It was a myth that was created many, many years ago, and that myth has grown to become now a truth. And that's what happens, myths. Myths become truths. Ask Mr. Trump that. He'll tell you all about it.
Keep saying it enough. They
keep saying it often enough, and eventually it becomes the truth to the average person.
AI agents are everywhere, automating tasks and making decisions at machine speed. But agents make mistakes. Just one rogue agent can do big damage before you even notice. Rubrik Agent Cloud is the only platform that helps you monitor agents, set guardrails, and rewind mistakes, so you can unleash agents, not risk. Accelerate your AI transformation at Rubrik.com. That's RUBRIK.com.
At Lowe's, this Veterans Day and every day, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get automatic silver status in My Lowe's Rewards with free standard shipping, plus 10% off eligible purchases with no annual limit. It's one way we honor and give back to those who have served and still do. Learn more now at Lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at Lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
So the concept itself, so if I said to you, can you give me the scale on which you can measure one human being over another? You'd start scratching your head.
Mm-hmm.
Because you say, yeah, but everybody's different. Of course they are. We're genetically different. We're environmentally different. Even triplets, and I've delivered triplets, by the way, each individual triplet will actually tell you, I am completely different from number 2 or number 1. In other words, every human being on the planet is separate, individual, a wonderful, special, unique, lovely person. Is that okay? The problems come when we start merging our behaviour with who we are. That's what Ellis copped. So in other words, if I'm doing very well at something, then I think I'm great. If I'm doing very bad at something, I think I'm terrible. So I play the rating game. I'm going up and down the scale, morning, noon, and night, every sort of day. So if my social media feed is doing great, I'm fantastic. If my social media feed is not going well, I feel terrible. And of course, the more anxious I become, do you know what I mean? The more I rate myself. And the more my rating is going down, the more anxious I'm becoming that I need to do something to improve it. And I start catastrophizing how awful it'll be if everybody shuns me. And then I really start getting into trouble and I get very distressed. And all that's happened is I'm playing the rating game. So the rating game is all about this ridiculous idea that one human being can be rated over another. So I teach everybody who comes to see me unconditional self-acceptance. Learn to be comfortable with yourself. Learn to accept yourself. Learn to accept that you're going to mess up. You're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. But you can't be measured.
One of the things, tell me if I'm right by saying this, one of the things you suggest is that we should embrace the feminine side within us a little more. Yep. First of all, tell me briefly what you mean by that. And then I see that there are obvious problems with that in the world we're living in at the moment.
Well, I've always believed that both men and women, do you know what I mean? So I think this is an important point, have both male attributes and female attributes.
Yeah.
So in other words, we're not just homogenous, do you know what I mean? And, you know, some men will relate very easily to the very male attributes. For example, the rugby players, the soccer players, they might like going out with the lads, do you know what I mean, etc., etc., etc. But the male perspective is definitely it's a little bit harder at times. Do you know what I mean? More problem solving. So I would relate to that side of it. But if I was asked for who am I more comfortable, always been more comfortable talking to women, because women are more empathetic. They're really good at solving problems. They listen better. They're more nuanced. Do you know what I mean? They're less likely to, like, if we had, I keep saying this, if we had women in general in every position of politics and on our armed service, we would have a lot less wars, we'd have a lot less rows, do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that's always the case. There are definitely some women who are psychopathic in nature, do you know what I mean, or who definitely will not fall into this group. But as a general rule of thumb, I have always found that I relate better to people with a sense of humour, with empathy, who listen, do you know what I mean, who are who want to solve the problem, who don't want to rate themselves so much. Do you know what I mean? Women get it. So when I'm chatting to women, they get it instantly. Do you know what I mean? And I feel more comfortable doing it. But that doesn't say I've helped countless men. Do you know what I mean? And what I love actually is when men come up to me and say, "Can I just have a word with you?" And to me, that's wonderful, because that means we're getting there.
Is it a cliche? Because you hear it since I've been growing up. Men can't talk about their problems. I've met men in the last 3-5 years who've said to me they think that's a little bit of a cliche.
Yeah, I would agree with that cliche. I'll tell you what I do feel. It's not so much that men are not good at talking about their problems, but they're very poor at identifying their emotions.
That's different, yeah.
That's a different matter. So when somebody comes to me, I will often ask them, "How did that make you feel?" Because that's the key. If something's happening in your life, how does it make you feel? And the person might be really struggling, so I might have to give them a menu. I might have to say, do you feel frustrated by it? Do you feel ashamed by it? Do you feel guilty by it? Do you feel down because of it? Do you feel hurt? Do you feel, and very quickly the person will say, hurt, or ashamed, or very anxious. Do you know what I mean? Or I've had people come to me who thought they were anxious, and really the problem was frustration. The great undiscussed emotion in mental health, the one that causes so much distress, and nobody ever talks about it.
Yes, go on. What is it? Frustration?
What is it? Frustration it's a thing called low frustration tolerance. And it goes like this. The thinking behind the person who struggles with this. Now, this is not somebody who we all get frustrated by situations, but this is somebody whose natural go-to emotion when things go wrong is frustration. So how we describe low frustration tolerance as I want long-term gain, but I don't want short-term pain. I want the situation to change, but don't want to change myself. I want it now. Those are the characteristics of the person with frustration. Mm-hmm. And how you'll identify it in yourself, if you're honest, is you're very quickly irritable. Do you know when things are not going your way? You give out a lot about things if they're not going away. If you're on the M1 or the M50 and this car comes screaming up behind you and flashes you to get out of the way, welcome to LFT. Because people who are very aggressive on the road. You know, the kind of person who steamrolls through very little empathy. Do you know what I mean? Maybe you're a boss, or maybe you're working with a group of people. I can identify quickly in the business. You know which managers are empathy people and which managers are LFT people. And it's a very important distinction, because LFT means that I'm spending my life in a state of almost aggression rather than a state of anxiety. Do you know what I mean? So they're very different emotions. And I can recall people coming to me over the years whose lives were a total mess. Do you know what I mean? Because of LFT. So I would ask people to do an exercise for about 2 to 3 months. And they get 3 questions. And every time they're frustrated about anything, they have to answer the 3 questions on paper. Not in their head.
What are they?
Because remember, as I said in Sligo there recently, the most important mental health skill that we all should have is the ability to write things down. Mm. Because when we write something down, we get it out of our emotional mind, and we put it down, and we let our rational mind examine it. And when we let our rational mind examine it, it's amazing the changes that start to happen. So when somebody's working with me, they will always be asked to write things down as they go along. So they'll do the writing, by the way.
Were there 3 questions you wanted?
3 questions. Question number 1, what is my long-term objective in this particular situation?
Yeah.
Question number 2, what short-term pain am I trying to avoid in this particular situation? Mm-hmm. And the 3rd question is, what changes in my thinking and behaviour do I need to make to achieve my objective in this particular situation? And those 3 questions sound very, very benign, but they are incredibly powerful questions. And they are really challenging, because I have people who come away but they've come back to me and said, when I answered those properly, I changed. And suddenly I'm softer, I'm listening more, I'm more empathetic, I'm not demanding things as much. I'm changing what I can, accepting what I can't change, but changing what I can. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and they're totally frustrated, a classic example of this is where somebody comes to you and I'm totally frustrated with my job. And I remember saying to one particular person, right, we're going to solve that tonight now. So I said, I want you to come and write a letter of resignation. And it was dead silence. And because that wasn't what the person was expecting. So then they said, but what'll I do tomorrow? I said, well, that's tomorrow's problem. Do you know what I mean? You've asked me to sort the problem out today. Do you know what I mean? But how am I going to pay my mortgage? Well, that's another problem you're going to have to face. And how am I going to act on my family's health? Well, yeah, that's another problem you're going to have to face. But you didn't ask me to solve those problems. You asked me to solve your present problem, which was you're totally frustrated with your job. So I began to get them to see that actually there was a plus to the job they were doing. Okay. So they had to learn to accept, to go with that, you know, because they couldn't change it. What they were wanting was they wanted their boss to change. They wanted their workmates to change. They wanted the type of work to change. They wanted to be paid better. Do you know
Somebody else's problem was they were being a victim.
Exactly. So then what they did was, in other words, here's the change in thinking. The situation won't change because I want it to change. So the only person who can change is me. Mm-hmm. So if I change how I looked at it, number one, then no longer I'm frustrated with the job. And number two, what the person did was went off and did a postgrad course to upgrade and shifted to a different job. Now they're really happy, paid much better, doing what they wanted. Yeah. My point is that we can all remain totally frustrated and give out and give out and give out and give out and give out, or we can try and do something about it.
It's the toddler lashing out.
Yes, but the trouble is that there's too many people who don't understand that they're getting stressed out of their heads all the time. And they don't understand that a lot of their stress is coming from their thinking about.
Yeah, people get overcome by stress and it inhibits their cognitive ability. So in other words, they become emotional creatures rather than thinking creatures because they're just fog of stress comes down. It's like the fog of anger or the red mist.
Yes, but the problem, and this is important, that when we are struggling with frustration, we're pumping out a lot of noradrenaline or aggression hormone, and we're pumping out a lot of cortisol. So those two things are not good for our physical health, for our blood pressure, for our cardiac arrhythmias. So in other words, people don't understand this. There is a physical cost sometimes to not dealing with our emotional distress.
100%.
One of my favourite lines that I get a person with social anxiety, by the way, to write down automatically is, we get rid of our social anxiety when we realise we're not as important as we think we are. And actually, that is the secret to social anxiety, by doing that. And actually, once you teach the person that by giving them exercises, they very quickly realise that's actually the truth. So if we're not as important as we think we are, then the quickest way to solve our boredom is to get off our backside and help somebody else. Start looking out for other people. Start being empathetic towards other people. Start listening more actively. And in other words, boredom means that I'm spending too much time focused on myself.
Navel gazing.
Instead of starting to move out and try to help other people.
If people understood, let's say you're a 13-year-old teenager who's just totally obsessed with brushing their hair, right?
Okay.
They don't understand what's obvious, and that is nobody cares and nobody's looking.
No.
But they think everybody's looking.
But you see, social anxiety, for those who they can read many of my books on this, but social anxiety is a false perception. And the two secrets to social anxiety is that, number one, social anxiety is caused by perception versus reality. Mm-hmm. And by the second thing is that people are self-obsessed. So once you understand that those two realities, so I have a false perception of what happens in a social situation. So once I learn what actually happens in a social situation, I very quickly get rid of a lot of my social anxiety. The second thing is that people are self-obsessed, that people are basically only interested in Mayfair. They're only interested in themselves. They're only interested in what goes on in their own head. So, for example, the conversation exercise that I try to teach most people with social anxiety is based on the reality that so person with social anxiety said, I'm such a boring person. And the first thing you have to do is, well, you can't be a boring person. That's a form of rating. So a topic of conversation can be boring, but not the person. So that's get rid of that part. So then the next question is, well, what's the only topic of conversation that people love to talk about? Is it the weather? Is it politics? Is it religion? Is it sport?
Me.
Is it GAA? It's me. So what you have is the hilarious situation that the person with social anxiety is whipping themselves to death because they can't come up with a topic that everybody would be interested in. When in reality, the topic that is staring them in the face, all they have to get to do is get the person to talk about themselves and they'll think I'm the most interesting person in the world. Yeah. And that is the secret to social anxiety.
Again, sorry for the social media. I mean, I know you're sick to death of it, I'd say, talking about social media, but social media actually even more exacerbates the me.
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say your average person who has 500 followers. I see this all the time. Somebody has 500 followers. Within those 500 followers, they are a superstar. That's their bubble. So they are actually famous within that 500. But the problem is that they think that 500 is the world rather than just the 500.
Well, also, it goes back to this whole concept that I have great conversations about with many young people. And it's the concept of what is a success. So suppose you're doing really well in your social media bubble or whatever nonsense goes on, and the person says, "Well, that's the person I want to be. They're a real success." So I say to them, "What happens next week if something goes wrong? Are they now a failure? So which are they? Are they a success or are they a failure?" So they're scratching their heads, of course, because they can't actually. They begin to realize that sometimes I'm a success and sometimes so in reality, we can neither be a success nor a failure as a person, but we can be successful at a particular task. So if my aim is to be the bee's knees for 500 people, well, then I'm successful at that task. But if you're asking me, do I reach 5 million people? No, but then I'm a failure at that task. If that's my task, do you know what I mean? But neither decides whether I'm a good or bad person. If I'm comfortable with myself, I don't care whether I have 500 or 500,000, do you know what I mean? But if my world is going to be so constricted that that's what I believe it's all about, well, then we have failed totally as human beings to teach young people what really matters. But I actually think that young people are much smarter and much more on the ball than we think they are.
I too as well.
And I have been very... I suppose heartened by the fact that when I go and chat to young people, they get it instantly and they know exactly what you're talking about. And I've had some young people say, I wish to God social media had never been invented. So in other words, we all believe that these kids are obsessed with their social media. They're only obsessed with their social media, just as if when you were a child, you know what I mean, maybe you were into, I don't know whether you're into sport or
comic or something.
Or comic or something like that. That was the bee's knees.
Yeah.
So, and sadly, social media is now the comic of the time, but it's very destructive comic.
And it never turns off.
And it never turns off because we instead of making sure all families put their devices on central location by 10:30.
Your book is called Beneath the Surface, and you've spent the entire interview talking about other people and dealing with people's problems and your clinical expertise. But this is all about you.
Yeah.
So finally, we talk about me.
Yeah.
Why did you have an issue in your mind deciding to do this?
Well, it was very interesting because my wife kept asking me, why are you writing this memoir? Particularly when she saw I got very emotional about it, got very distressed, because I was...
In the process of it?
In the process of it, because I was thinking back about times and people that I loved and cared about. I was thinking about really difficult periods of time in my life. I was thinking about lovely times in my life. There's a lovely poem called Moments. It was a love poem that I wrote for my wife.
Oh.
I talk about this wonderful, special moment when I met the person I love, and it's done from the night the lights went out. Do you know what I mean? In other words, in the great hall in Earlsfort Terrace where I wasn't even supposed to be there. Do you know what I mean? One night there was a guy on, Jamie Stone, who I knew. So I said I'd go down and listen to him. And sure, I wandered down and I looked like something came down from the mountains, I think. And here was this beautiful girl, do you know what I mean? And I saw her, asked her out, and then the lights went out. And 5 or 10 minutes later, the lights came back on and she was gone.
Oh.
And I always talk about, that was the moment. Because I could have said, my friend was pulling at me saying, come on, we'll go, it's time to go. And he said, no, there's something about that girl. And I went off around the place and I found her.
It's like a sliding doors moment.
Yeah, just one of those extraordinary moments. And we have, from that moment onwards, we've been inseparable. So this is a love story. So I'll read moments anyway. This is the book, or this is the poem. Moments. Wispy glances, soft and timeless. Dreamy hours of time grown still. The gentle hush of a shadowy eve, and the loving softness of a woman's touch. The chorus of 1,000 joy-filled hearts, and the swirling magic of a ghost-like dew. Moments, precious, wondrous gifts, snatched from the clutching arms of time, free from the numbing cares of life, untouched by the ceaseless hum and the soulless, mindless chaos of a dreary, far-off world. Fleeting glimpses of elusive peace for the helpless victims of merciless fate. Draughts of air for dying embers.
Thank you for reading that. That's lovely.
So
I see it.
Yeah. So that was, and I actually...
it kind of makes, it crystallizes the genius of moments.
Yes.
How moments are not just moments, they are these special things outside of our normal existence.
And we can all relate to those moments.
Yes, of course. It's a one thing you said there that that of course it resonates with what you've been talking about, and that is the word love, the word caring for other people. Love and caring for other people, I've learned from some reading and maybe even through my own experiences in life, are actually part of the ways that humans actually do best. So a writer I like is a political philosopher modern political philosopher called Rutger Bregman. I'm always talking about him on this podcast. But he's done a lot of research on the whole idea, historical research on the whole idea, that communities that help each other are happier communities, that people who help other people are happier people by the act of helping. And what he's saying is, it's actually hardwired in us, whether we know it or not. We're being told that we're hardwired to kill, to earn, to be greedy, and to demolish our opponent. Actually, the contrary is the truth. That actually humans do best by bringing the others up.
Of course they do. I mean,
and they also feel better.
Yeah, of course we are. If the best way, I continuously talk about this, the best way for people to improve their mental health, apart from all the normal things that we talked about, is to get out there and start actively empathizing and listening to other people and helping where you can.
Or just engaging.
And like Sister Kieran taught me something. There's a wonderful scene in the book. It's probably the heart of the book, really, and lots of people have picked it out as the heart of the book. And I was in Africa and it was horrific. There's no other words to, people can romanticize as much as they want, but you have to be there to see what I saw and deal with what I had to deal with, And I remember I was out there for about, maybe 6 or 8 months, and the children were 2 or 3 abed. Do you know what I mean? They were so sick. We were only admitting the really ill ones, the ones who had meningitis, the ones who dying from sickle anemia or malnutrition or pneumonia or whatever it happens to be. And and no sooner would I clear the ward, and we'd be full that evening. Do you know what I mean? It was like a non-stop conveyor belt of difficulties. And I remember after about 8 or 9 months being totally burnt out. And Kieran, who I loved greatly, kind of took me aside and she gave me the advice that I never forgot. And it's really at the heart of the whole book, really. And she said, there will always be, wars and problems and famines and difficulties. And we didn't cause this problem. And it's far too big for us to kind of do anything with. So if you don't understand that, you're never going to be of any help to yourself or to anybody else. Do you know what I mean? So it was a real wake-up call. But she said, the real secret, and she asked me to do this, which I've faithfully done for the rest of my life. She said, the one thing you can do is in that face-to-face interaction with that one person in front of you who's in trouble. If you can help that person, that's your job. And I never forgot her words, because it kind of does away with all the outside interference and negativity and silliness and rubbish and nonsense. And it just says, no, cut out all the crap. You're the person in front of me for that moment in time. You're the person that I can help. I'll do my best. I'm not saying I can always help you, but I'll certainly try. I'll empathize with where you are. And that is the secret to peace, happiness, and really understanding what love is really all about. Do you know what I mean? The romantic love is beautiful, but this is a different kind of love. It's a kind of a
being at peace with who you are and with how you relate to other people.
And because I'm able to kind of say, look, I mess up. I'm not perfect. If you're looking for perfection, you're in the wrong place here. Do you know what I mean? I'm very happy to say that to people. Do you know what I mean? So it's trying to just learn to accept yourself as you are. Do you know what I mean? This is who I am. I'm good in some areas. I'm not so good in other areas. I do my best. Do you know what I mean? But I'm happy with who I am. And I will try and help each person that comes my way. And I don't care what. We talk about meaning at the back of the book. Do you know what I mean? I don't care what belief system you have or whether you believe in anything. It doesn't make any difference. The way to peace is this road. Do you know what I mean? So I think that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Harry Barry, thank you. Dr. Harry Barry, thank you very much. Beneath the Surface is a memoir, an Irish doctor's journey of resilience, empathy and self-discovery. It's been a great pleasure talking.
Okay, not at all.
Thank you very much.
Not at all. Pleasure.
And my thanks to Dr. Harry Barry for coming in and talking to me about this fascinating subject. My thanks, of course, to On Ice, our sponsor, Ireland's premium ice skating experience. Get down there, Dundrum and Swords, Marina Market in Cork, as well as Waterford and Limerick. Enjoy Ireland's #1 festive and family entertainment this Christmas. But mainly, my thanks to you. And if you get a chance, tell one other person, if you can, that you enjoyed this podcast and maybe recommend it to them. Thanks, and I'll see you same time next week.
The Mario Rosenstock Podcast with On Ice, Ireland's premium ice skating experience, where winter memories are made. Visit onice.ie.
GoLoud. Sounds better with us.
At Lowe's, this Veterans Day and every day, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get automatic silver status in My Lowe's Rewards with free standard shipping, plus 10% off eligible purchases with no annual limit. It's one way we honor and give back to those who have served and still do. Learn more now at lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.